Hi, this is Arango of littleguy.cgi.com, and today I would like to show you how to make an animation with this transformable robot. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, User Preferences, and then select Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe or other 3D programs. Okay, what you see here is a transformable robot from previous tutorials. In the previous tutorials, I showed how to model the robot, how to set up the robot to transform from a jet to a robot and back again. I also showed how to rig the humanoid version of the robot. What this tutorial is going to be is we're going to put all of the different elements together and show how to make a animation from those different elements. Okay, what you see here is a empty represented by a cube, but empty is a non-renderable object. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here, go to object mode, we're going to select the empty. We're then going to press M to bring up our move to layer. We're going to hold shift and then we're going to select this layer here. The reason why we're selecting this layer here is so that the empty will appear on the layer right above it, as well as the layer that I currently have my cursor selected on. So I'm going to left click. So now this is, again, it's in this layer as well as the layer beneath here. What we're going to do now is select on our armature. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. We're going to hold shift and select right here. We're then going to press Control P, which brings up our Set Parent To menu. We're then going to choose Object Keep Transform. Okay, so now with our empty, just our empty selected, when we press G, we can see that our mesh and our armature moves around. I'm going to right click to get that to jump right back. When we select here for our lower detailed mesh, we can also see that when we press G, as well, this moves around. I'm going to right click to get that to jump right back. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click right here, and what you see here is a mesh that is set up for the actual transformation to take place for our transformable robot. This mesh is connected to an empty here. This empty is connected to this bone here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel, zoom back, hold the middle mouse button so you can see what's going on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this layer right here, and this is our mesh and our armature that's set up for the robot to move around in robot mode. And what we want to do is hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. I'm going to press and hold shift and select this layer. So now we can see both of the armatures together. Okay, I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. Now this empty is the empty that our armature is our armature for our robot mode control is connected to. And if we press G, we can see that it's moving around. So I'm going to right click to get it to jump right back. What we want to do is parent this empty to this empty. This empty is the empty that is connected to the mesh that is there for the purpose of transforming our robot. So with the empty that's connected to the mesh that is set up for controlling the robot in humanoid form, if with this empty selected first, you want to hold shift, and then you want to select the other mesh that's set up and connected to the armature for transformation. You want to select that second. So with that done, now what you're going to do is press Control P. This brings up our Set Parent To menu. Then you're going to choose Object Keep Transform. Okay, what you're going to do now is press A to deselect. We're going to select this bone right here. When we selected this bone, it jumped into pose mode. We don't want that. So we're going to click here, go to object mode, and now with this bone selected in object mode, we're going to let's press here to make sure we're on the layer that it's currently selected in. Then we're going to press M to bring up our move to layer panel. And remember, we're in object mode, not pose mode. You want to be in object mode, not pose mode. If you see a panel pop up while you're in pose mode, it's the move bone layer. You don't want that. We want to move the object of the bone, okay? So I'm going to hold shift and then I'm going to select this layer right here. The reason why I did that is because I want that bone to show up in our detailed mesh layer as well as our less detailed mesh layer. So when I click here, you can see the bone there. And if I press G to move, you can see this moving around as well. So I'm going to right click to get that to jump back to its original place. Don't let all of this stuff get to you. If you've worked your way through the tutorials, we are moving on to the very cool part here. This is like the good stuff here. If you've come into this tutorial and you didn't go through the other ones, you're probably like, what in the world? But for you guys who have been along for the ride, I think you're really going to like this. Like I said, this is the fun stuff here. We just got to get through this first initial, setup stuff. Then we can actually go to animating it, and it's pretty cool. So let's move along. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to click here to select this layer. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm then going to select this layer while holding shift. And that is the armature that is connected to this mesh. Now this mesh is for the transformation. When we scrub the timeline, you can see there's our transformation happening. Something very cool happened while I was working on the last tutorial, the previous tutorial to this one. In the last tutorial, I had mentioned the fact that I did not know how to set up an action constraint to have the transformation take place. However, since I made that statement, I did learn how to do it, and it's very cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. We're going to make sure we have our armature selected. We're going to click here to go to edit mode. I'm going to click here to go to right view. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here to get our 3D cursor to move here. I'm going to press shift A, which brought in a new bone. I'm going to pull up for that new bone. I'm going to select this new bone. I'm going to press N, and then I'm going to name this transformation control. Prefer to have an underscore in there, and I'll just click here to get that to lock in. Okay, so what we're going to do now is hold the middle mouse button right here, pull to the side, then we're going to click here, select the dope sheet. We can see that our frames are from 1 to, I believe it's to 41. If I hover my mouse here and press the home key, it being Blender zooms in on all of these keys. What we want to do now is click here, go to the action editor. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button here, drag to the side. Okay, we can see the name of our current action here. We're going to click here and change that to transformation. Press enter to lock that in. Now what we're going to do is hold our middle mouse button, drag to the side some more. Okay, what we're going to do now is press this X to get rid of these keyframes here. We're going to hold our mouse here, left click and drag to get rid of that window. We're now going to click here, go to pose mode. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. With our transformation bone selected, we're going to hold shift and select this bone here. We're then going to press shift control C. This brings up our add constraints with targets menu. We're then going to choose action. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our bone constraints panel, and we can see here, here's our transformation bone, which is what we want. We want to click here. We're going to select transformation for our action. We're going to click here and select Y scale. We're then going to click here where it says world space and change this to local space. Okay, what we're going to do now is where it says start, This is where our first frame of our animation for our transformation starts at. So we're going to put in 1. Then where it says end, this is the last frame. So we're going to put in 4:1. Okay, for our minimum, we're going to click here and put in 1. And then for our maximum, we're going to click here and put in 0.5. Then left click to lock in. Okay, now what we're going to do is select our transformation bone and press S to scale. And we can see our one bone there moving, showing us that it looks like everything is set up correctly. So I'm going to right click to get this to jump back to its original size. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to press N to take away this properties panel. I'm going to press A to deselect, A to select everything, as in the bones. I'm going to select here to get this to deselect. I'm going to select here, then select here again. And I'm going to press C for paint select, hold the middle mouse button to get that to deselect. Because basically what you want is you want all of your bones selected with the exception of this. All of these bones selected first. Then you want to hold shift and select this bone last. This is the bone that we set up the constraint for. So now with that done, these bones selected first, and then this bone that had the constraint that we set up selected last. What you want to do now is go to Pose, go to Constraints, and then go to Copy Constraints to Selected Bones. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back, and with all of that work done, now we can select just this bone, and then we can press S to scale, and look at that. There's our transformation. We just scale down. Then if we want it to transform back, we just pull the other direction. So we have that transformation able to easily be set up just by, scaling down and scaling up this bone. Very cool. I'm going to right click to get that to jump back to its original size. Okay, now we are set up for our animation. So we're going to click here, go to object mode. I'm going to zoom back, hold the middle mouse button to pan the view a little bit. I'm going to press Alt H. So we bring our floor back from a previous tutorial. Here was our original plane model. I'm going to press X, then choose to delete that because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to hold shift and select here. So there's our mesh that is set up for movement in robot form. And then we can select this. And inside of that other mesh is our low poly mesh should we choose to use that. For now, I'm going to hold shift and deselect that. Okay, and I'm going to hold the middle mouse button the way we want it so that when we grab this bone, we press G and see that everything moves together, and that's what we want. So I'm going to right click to get that to jump right back to its original position. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. Okay, what we're going to do now is select this layer here where we can see our transformable armature, or our armature setup for transformation, our empty, and here's our main mover bone. So we want to have this selected. We're going to hold shift and we're going to select here. And what we have here is we have our mesh that's set up for animating the robot in robot form, as well as its armature. So what we're going to do is hover our mouse here, click and drag to give ourselves some room. This armature here is what this is. As a matter of fact, we'll click here and we'll name this main underscore mover. Then we'll select plus to see what's connected to this. So we're going to look to this empty right here. We're going to select plus. Then there's this empty right here, which I believe is the empty that is currently on the screen. I know this is kind of confusing. I'm going to click here. Now here is the meta rig connected to that empty. So I'm going to click here, scroll down some. Now this cube, I believe, actually I think it's this cube, yep. This cube right here, and that's just because that's what the mesh was originally made for. So what we're going to do is hover our mouse here. We're going to double click here, and we're going to name this robot underscore mode. That's mainly what that's for, this mesh. This is the should be the low res robot modes. We'll put low or low poly robot mode. And then we have our armature here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to double click here. We'll put that R for, R armature, like R as in robot. Armature, since it's mainly going to be used for controlling the robot, and we'll click off of here. Okay, the reason why we opened up this list was so we could get to these options right here. So what we want to do is select this eye to make our robot mode mesh disappear. We're also going to deselect this arrow right here, which is how you can grab and select it. We're also going to select this render button so that without it being activated, nothing will render from there. We're going to do the same thing for our low res mesh. Okay, when we selected the meta rig in the list, it went into edit mode. I can see something selected there, so I'm going to press A to deselect. Then I'm going to click here to come back to object mode. Okay, and here's our meta rig here. So we're going to actually double click here. We'll put a R in front of this so that we know that this is associated with robot mode. And what we're going to do is click the eye so you can't see that. Select this arrow so you can't select it, and select this camera so that it won't render as well. And it is the armature or meta rig that is connected to our mesh, which is set up for posing the robot in robot mode. And as we move along, this should make sense to you as why we're doing this. So now what we want to do is we're going to hold shift and select here. So this is our transformation mesh that we are seeing here, and we want that to be seen here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is zoom back. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, change the view. I'm going to select this plane right here, zoom back more. I'm going to press S to scale, zoom back more, give us some fly room. For this, we're going to select our bone right here. We're on frame 0. Let's go to frame 1. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis there for our robot. I'm going to select our armature. I'm going to click here, go into pose mode, and then I'm going to shrink our transformation bone, which changes us into jet mode, which is what we want. I'm going to roll back. Hopefully you can see that. Let me not roll back too far. I'm going to select our main mover bone, and then I'm going to move this back. Roll back the mouse wheel, maybe move it back to about here. Okay, now what we're going to do is press I, and we're going to insert a keyframe for location and rotation. Then just select there. We're going to click here and change this to 120. We're then going to go up about almost a second. We're at 24 frames a second, so we're at frame 22. You can see right here. We're going to push this forward like this. We're then going to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Then we're going to press I to put up our insert keyframe menu. We're going to choose location, rotation. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the right mouse button and pull back a little bit. We're going to push up some. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis, some like that. Left click to lock in. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. Hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm then going to press I to bring up our insert keyframe menu. Then I'm going to choose location, rotation. Okay, now we're just going to move a few more keyframes. Then we're going to push this down. There we go. So if you push down and you see it starting to go through, it gives you, some distance where you can say, okay, I'm close to the bottom, which is where I want. So I'm going to bring it right above. Then I'm going to press R to rotate on the x-axis to get it to lean forward some. This. Then I'm going to press I to bring up our insert keyframe menu. Then I'm going to choose location, rotation. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. And I'm going to scroll back. For the upward one, I want it to be a little bit higher, so I'll just move it up. I'll press I to bring up our insert keyframe menu. Then I'll choose location, rotation again. I'll scrub the timeline again. There we go. And what we're doing here is just getting our basic movement in for our jet. When it comes like this, we're going to have the jet transform to a robot and then land on its feet. Okay, so let's do that now. So I'm going to hold the right mouse button and scrub along the timeline to about here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I want the transformation to start happening right about now. It's kind of hard to see, but the transformation bone is right here. I'm going to click there. As soon as I click there, that took us right into pose mode. With this bone selected, what we want to do is press I to bring up our insert keyframe menu. Then we're going to choose scaling to insert a scaling keyframe in. So then what we're going to do is hold the right mouse button down. I'm waiting for this to go up some. Right there, I want it to be about fully transformed into robot mode. I guess I'm saying about because I am wondering, do I want it to be fully transformed here or to transform as it's coming down? You know what? I do. I want it to be fully transformed here. So what we're going to do is we're going to press S to scale and scale it up so that our transformation is complete. Then I'm going to left click to lock in. I'm then going to press I to bring up our insert keyframe menu. Then I'm going to choose scaling to insert a scaling keyframe. Okay, now that we have our transformable robot in robot mode, we want this mesh to disappear and the other mesh to appear. The mesh that is set up to animate while the transformable robot is in robot mode. Okay, the way we're going to do that is we're going to hover our mouse here. We're going to press I over the visibility button, I over the selectable button, and I over the renderable button. We're also going to press this plus button here. We're going to scroll down some. Here's our cube, which is actually our robot right there. So we're going to press I over the visibility button, I over the selectable button, as well as I over the renderable button. Okay, so we're going to scroll down some more. And we have our robot meta rig here. So we're going to hover here. We're going to press I, as well as I here over for the visibility, the selectable button, and the renderable button. Okay, we're going to scroll down a little bit more. And this is our detailed robot. So we're going to press I, as well as I. Okay, when I'm pressing I am just inserting keyframes in. So what we want to do is push the right arrow key to move one frame forward. And now that we are one frame forward in the future, what we want to do is select all of these options here so that they're out of view, and then we'll press I for all of these. And then what we want to do is we want to bring in our mesh and our armature that's going to deal with the robot animating in robot form. So what we're going to do is select all of this. And this is our low poly robot. We can leave this unselected for now, but we'll select this as well. Now we'll hover over here and press I, as well as I. So now when we scrub backwards in time, we can see there's our jet, there's our transformation happening. And if you look here, you can see this is the transformation mesh, right? Because you can't see any hands. As we scroll forward, now you can see here is the our other mesh came in. You can tell from these pole targets that now our other mesh is showing that we're going to use to control our robot mesh. And then it comes down to the ground there. And what that did is now, we have a optimum armature, for posing in robot mode. So we'll select here. We'll click here to go to pose mode. We'll zoom in. We'll hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. So what we'll do is we'll press the let's see, I'm gonna push back. Okay, so it goes up. I'm just moving along the timeline. So here is moving backwards, so it's okay, here we go. So we're going up, up. Now there's our rig. Up. Now we're starting to come down there. So what we can do is we'll press back. Actually, it's not back. We'll press back here. There's the highest position. So what we're going to do is we're going to press A for our to select all of our bones. We'll press I, and then we're going to choose to insert a location rotation scale. As a matter of fact, we'll go here, we'll hold the middle mouse button and pull to the side. We'll click this key, and then we'll select location rotation scale. So now as we keyframe this, every time we press I, Blender will automatically put a keyframe in that has location rotation scale already set up, for that keyframe. Okay, so we'll press the right arrow to advance forward a few frames. I'm going to select here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button so you can get a better view. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y-axis to lift this arm up. Left click to lock in. I'm going to select here to copy this pose, and then I'm going to select here to paste it to the opposite side. And then I'm going to press A to deselect there, then A to select everything. I'm going to press I. Blender automatically put a location rotation scale in for everything for us. You know what I think we'll add to it? Raising the leg up a little. So I'm going to select the leg there, this bone for the leg. I'm going to push up like this. And I think I'm going to select here. Press R to rotate it on the X-axis like this for here. I'll take the head. I'll press R to rotate on the X-axis here so it points up slightly. Then I'll press A to deselect and A to select everything, and I'll press I to put keyframes in right there for all of the bones. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. I'm going to take my arrow key and make us advance forward. Okay, so we hit the ground right there. Okay, so what we'll do is rotate our view. You can see we're actually coming through the floor there. So what we're going to do is grab, zoom in. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We'll grab this, push this up. I'm actually going to grab this floor plane, which has no keyframes on it. We'll lower this down a little bit. I'm going to select this bone right here. Select this. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X-axis. Then I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z-axis. Turn it out a little. So what we'll do is we'll press A to select all the bones, then we'll press I to insert a keyframe. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back, hold the middle mouse button and rotate the view slightly. I'm going to press my left arrow key to go up some. so we can see, okay, there's the hit right there. So now what we'll do is we'll go forward, 3 keyframes. We'll roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. Hold the middle mouse button to turn. We'll select here. We'll press R to rotate on the x-axis to make this come forward some, like this. We'll select here, R to rotate on the x-axis to make this come forward some, like that. We'll select the head, press R to rotate on the x-axis to make it come forward. Select the arm, press R to rotate on the y-axis. Okay, we'll copy that pose and paste it to the other side, like that. Then we'll press A to deselect and A to select all of the bones, then I to insert keyframes for that pose. Okay, we'll roll the mouse wheel back, scrub along the timeline and see what's going on. Okay, and it needs more. And a way that we can give it more, we're on that same keyframe that we added the other keyframes. We're going to select our bone right here, bend down lower like this. Then we're going to press I to insert a keyframe there. We'll roll the mouse wheel back, scrub the timeline. It looks better. Okay, then what we'll do is we will, that was frame 33. We'll go back. We'll go to frame 50. Okay, then at frame 50, we'll press A to deselect, A to select everything. We'll press and hold Alt, then R, and then G. We'll then select our main mover bone, hold the middle mouse button to rotate our view. We'll lift this up so it's not coming through the floor. Hold the middle mouse button to see the view. Push it down just slightly. Trying to get it so it's not going through the floor. There we go. We'll then select back on our armature. That moves our robot mode. Okay, then we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to select here. I'm going to press R to rotate on the y-axis. Zoom in. What you want to do here is have like a cool pose, because this the robot just transformed. So you want it hit the ground. This is like its cool stand-up pose. I'm going to zoom in here. Click here. I'm going to hold shift and select here. Then I'm going to press, move my mouse around here, press S to scale the hand in. I'm then going to press C for paint select, hold the middle mouse button to deselect there. Then I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis to get this even more of a fist like that. Left click to lock in. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out some. And what I'm going to do is press A to deselect. A to deselect. I'm going to hold Control. Oops. Select right here. I'm going to hold Control and the right mouse button to select all of this right here. I'm going to copy here and then paste the other side. Okay, we'll grab the leg bone here. We'll press R to rotate on the Z axis. Turn this out to the side. Select here. Press R to rotate on the Z axis. Turn that out to the side. We'll make the legs bend down a little bit more like that. We'll select here. We'll press R to rotate on the X axis. A nice heroic stance. We'll select here. Hold shift and select here. We'll press R to rotate on the X axis here to bring the arms back. We take the head and press R to rotate on the X axis. Then R to rotate on the Z axis, and then we'll press A to deselect, A to select everything, then I to insert a keyframe in. Okay, now we need to select this bone since we moved this as well, and we need to press I to insert a keyframe in for that as well. So what we're going to do now is zoom back. Okay, and actually let me get to that keyframe, which is 50. Zoom back, pull up, press I to insert a keyframe. There we go. That lands. So let's see. So we fly up, jet mode, transform, land, stand up. Okay, and what we'll do now is we'll hover the cursor mouse over here, and we'll press shift and then the up arrow. And what we'll do, I'm going to zoom in. So we'll select this leg right here. We'll move this forward like this. We'll select this leg like here, move that back. We'll select here. We'll push down some like this. We'll select here. We'll press R to rotate on the x-axis up like that. Select here. Pull this back here. We'll select this, push this forward. Now we're going to press R to rotate on the x-axis, and what I'm showing you here is quickly how to set up a walk cycle. Pull that back like that. Okay, I'm going to pull this back a little bit more. I'm going to hold the mouse button to turn to the side. We need to grab this arm here, press R to rotate on the x-axis like this. We can't go back too far because of the wing. We'll press R to rotate on the y-axis to bring it in some. This arm we'll select this arm. We'll press R to rotate on the x-axis to bring this up some. We'll press R to rotate on the y-axis to bring this in some. Holding the middle mouse button just to get a decent look. I'm going to select here, press R to rotate on the x-axis to get this up some. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press C for paint select and select these right here. I'm going to right click, press R to rotate on the Y axis there slightly. Select here, press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Left click to lock in, zoom back. I'm going to select here, press R to rotate on the x-axis like this. Okay, I'm going to select the head. I'm going to press R to rotate on the z-axis like this. Left click to lock in. Okay, with all of that set up now, I'm actually going to press R to rotate on the x-axis slightly like this. Left click to lock in. I'm going to press A to deselect, A to select everything, I to insert keyframes for all of those poses, or that pose I should say, all the bones in that pose. I'm going to click here to copy the pose. I'm going to hover my mouse here. I'm going to press shift and then up once while holding shift, up again while holding shift. I'm then going to select here, which pasted the opposite frame. Okay, this looks a little strange, so I'm going to click here and just pull this back some like that. I'm going to press A to select everything, then I to insert a keyframe there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is click here, select animation just to make moving keyframes around easier. I want the mouse wheel to zoom back. Now what we're going to do is scroll here to this. We'll hover our mouse here, we'll press the home key, we'll select right here, just this top keyframe selects all of those keyframes. Then what we're going to do is move our timeline indicator to about 93. Actually, it should be further, 93. About here. We'll press Shift D to duplicate those keyframes and then move them to here. Then left click to lock in. I'll press G to move them a little bit further even. About here. Okay, so now when we scrub the timeline, we should see that. So what we want to do is go to about the middle point, which is here. Hold the middle mouse button. We'll select there. We'll press Alt R to make that go flat. We'll select here. We'll drag this in some like this. We'll take our pull indicator and pull that in some. We'll select here. Press R to rotate on the Z axis. Opposite way. We'll pull this straight up like this. We'll press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Whoops, right click. R to rotate on the X axis like this. We'll select here. We'll press Alt R. Press Alt R to rotate on the X axis. Whoops. I'm gonna hold Shift and middle mouse button. We'll select here. We'll select R to rotate on the X axis here. Left click to lock in. Pull this up some like this. Pull this back some. Up a little bit higher. Select here. Pull this over to the side some. We'll select here. Pull this over here some. Select there. That's that root football bone. Pull that over a little bit. Then we'll select here again and push straight up some like this. Now what we're going to do is press A to deselect, A to select everything, and then I to insert a keyframe in for that pose. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and pull to the side. We're going to select this button to copy all of our keyframes. Now we're going to move to about the midway point right here. Then we're going to select paste the opposite pose for right here. Then we'll press I to insert keyframes for that pose. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the right mouse button. We're going to go to here. We're going to press A to deselect. We're going to hold Control and left click. What that does is select everything that's on the timeline and on this side of the timeline. So what we're going to do now is press A to deselect. Here we're going to take our timeline to about here. We're going to actually we need this. We're going to go to 70 to about here. And what we're going to do is hold Control left click here. Then we're going to press Shift D. Pull these keyframes over. I'm looking at the bottom timeline right now. To about here. Left click to lock in. I'm going to right click right here and press move this right here. Press E to bring the timeline to this point. Okay, so now what we're going to do is scrub the timeline by holding the right mouse button back. There's our pose. Standing pose there. So what we're going to do now is select here. Press I. Then move the timeline. So we'll push forward here like that. Press I. Press I again. Move forward, sorry, first, then press I. Press I again. So let's scrub the timeline. There's our jet, there's our transformation. Now we start walking forward there. Let me get a view so you can see everything that's happening. What we're going to do now is press from this view, hold Control, hold Alt, and hold the 0 key to get a camera to point towards the direction we're facing. So we'll roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. We'll scroll back. When we scroll back, we see our mech disappearing from the camera view. To deal with this, what we have to do is click here, which is the same thing as selecting the camera here. Click or look to here, our camera menu. Pull this out some. See where it says clipping here? So by taking this back, we want to take it way back so we can see. Just dragging. Then we can, the camera can see further from adjusting that clipping. Okay, let's scrub our timeline now. So we'll go back. Okay, so the jet's just out of view. So what we're going to do is press the End menu. We're going to scroll up. We're going to select Lock Camera to View. We're going to press N to take that away. We're going to hold Shift and hold the middle mouse button to pan to get our camera into view. Now we're going to press N, take this check mark away from Lock Camera, and we'll scrub along the timeline. Okay, let's try to get a better angle so he lands there. So we'll press N, Lock Camera to View, hold the middle mouse button, and actually select there. I can rotate. There we go. Now I'm going to hold Control and hold the right mouse button to zoom in some. I'm going to unclick there, press N, scroll back. Okay, and I'm going to click one more frame, then I'm going to press N here so the animation ends there. I'm going to click this to zoom back. Okay, I'm going to press the play button to see how this goes. Very fast. Yeah, it's not bad. You can always adjust your keyframes to slow down the speed a little bit and smooth things out. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Also, there is a support button on my homepage where you can give a donation of any amount, which would be appreciated, and it just allows me to have more time to make more tutorials. Also, for those of you out there who are new to this channel, if you like the videos in this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.